I'm really excited to be here, and just a quick bit of background. I am a kinesiologist as well. I've been practicing for over 20 years. Don't do the math, it's okay. So in talking about regulation, I'm going to talk about not just how to become regulated, but why it's really important for you to do it, and how the profession kind of arrived at this stage of being regulated. It's a milestone for us because really we are joining the ranks of all the other healthcare professionals, and so we will be operating in a peer-based situation with them. So it's very, very exciting for us. So I will spend some time explaining to you what it means to be regulated, what the college is about, the requirements to become a member of the college, and any questions that you have on the way through, please ask. It's a lot of information, and I've been working on this project for almost a decade now. So I've had a lot of opportunity to wrap my head around what it means. So, as I say, ask a lot of questions. If you still have more questions, keep coming back, get in touch with the college. We're there to help you and certainly make sure that you know what's required as you become a regulated health professional, okay? So onward. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about is what it actually means to be regulated and what the model looks like. So when we talk about regulation, this is a governance piece, and we often have some confusion between associations and colleges. So associations promote you and they go and represent you. The college is actually formed to protect the public. So we govern you, we explain what the requirements are. And our main goal and our main mandate is public protection. So in Ontario, the model for regulation is what's known as a self-governance model. So rather than the government simply saying, you're going to be regulated, here's the rules, what they do is they say, we're going to regulate you, but we're going to do this in partnership with you. So they put together the legislative framework and some of the general rules, and then what we get to do as a profession is determine what those standards look like. So that's why it takes so long for this to get set up, because in drafting the regulations, and the college drafts them, we have to go out and do things like stakeholder consultations. So we write up the regulations, we post them, and the entire membership, or potential membership of the college, gets the opportunity to comment on them. So we will be continuing to produce other standards and publish those and put them out for consultation. I was just at a meeting yesterday where we developed a couple of brand new standards that are going to go up on our website probably in the new year. And these are things that you want to be aware of, because as potential members and as you become regulated as members of the actual college, you have opportunity to participate in saying, no, that's not workable, or here's a better way of setting this standard. Okay? So that's what the self-governance model is about. It's about working in partnership with the government to actually create a model that's workable in terms of protecting the public, but also in making sure that healthcare practitioners can actually meet those standards and that they're reasonable to be met. Okay? So it's critically important as we move into becoming regulated that we participate. So here in Ontario, health professions are regulated under the Regulated Health Professions Act, and then they each have their own individual act and their own regulations. Okay? So I know it's a lot to take in. So we've got the big piece of legislation, we've got the individual acts, and then we have the regulations, which are really something that we start to develop. That's still big picture legalese, and then underneath that we create standards. Okay? And those standards are things that we can change fairly easily. We can't change regulations without going back and consulting with the government. A number of other professions are regulated in Ontario. So lawyers, for example, are regulated. And more recently, there has been a College of Trades created. So the trades are all being regulated. So everything right down to, your barber and hairstylist are being regulated. And so this is just laying out what the expectations are for these people as they perform their jobs. So as I mentioned, kinesiology is regulated under the Regulated Health Professions Act from 1991, and then we have our own act, which is the Kinesiology Act. Now, most of that is active. The only piece that's not active is the piece that actually allows us to govern the profession. So at this particular point in time, we're targeting April 1st, 2013 for the college to become active. When that happens, the entire act is in place, and we're going to be part of that health professions group. Now, the other basis to this self-governance puts us in the position where we now become accountable for all the work we do. In the past, kinesiologists would work independently, but a number of them would also work with other healthcare professionals. Because these healthcare professionals were regulated, ultimately the burden of responsibility for anything that got done in the clinic or whatever setting they were working in would fall on that other healthcare professional. As we become regulated, even when we're working with other health professions that are regulated, we are responsible wholly for our practice. So if you were working in conjunction with a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist, a chiro, a doctor, anyone else, if they asked you to do something, it would be entirely up to you to determine if that's my scope of practice, I'm capable of doing it, is it the right thing to do for the patient or the client? And if you disagreed, you would have to actually work that out with the health professional you were working with, because the burden of responsibility falls on your shoulders then when you provide any form of care. Now the way that we're set up and managed is we have a council. I'm currently the president. The council is comprised of public members and members from the profession, and currently right now we also have some academic members. So this initial council has been formed to draft the regulations, the standards, put in place staff. So we've hired a registrar. The registrar is basically like a CEO for the organization, and she has hired staff who are responsible for all the activities that the college has to participate in. So we need people who will review registration applications and manage the examination process. We will need people who are responsible for the continuing quality of the profession and our quality assurance program. So there are a number of things that have to go on a regular basis. So the council was formed to put all of these structures in place and ensure proper staffing so that the college could open its doors and be functional. We have open council meetings. So what that means is all those meetings are public. Any member of the public can attend. So if you want to drop by and listen to a real rocking meeting, you can come on down and listen to us talk about all of this stuff. But what this does is it creates a level of public accountability. So you know what's going on a regular basis with this organization that is governing the profession. The other piece that's in here in terms of being very open and accountable is disciplinary hearings. So heaven forbid that anybody should commit an act of professional misconduct, but we have very open and transparent processes for dealing with those sorts of eventualities. And that's one of the things that I think sometimes people need to be assured of as we move into being regulated health professionals, is that if somebody ever does complain about you, that you will be treated fairly, that it's a fair and just process, and the college is here to administer that process and make sure that the right outcome occurs. Any questions so far? Okay. So as I mentioned, our primary mandate is public protection. So the ways that we protect the public are the following. First, by control of entry to practice. So we set the standard for the profession. So when we talk about entry to practice, it's not necessarily I've graduated with a degree, it's am I competent to actually work with people independently? So do you have the combination of knowledge, skills, and judgment to be able to provide services to a client who comes to see you and do it safely and effectively? Okay, so that's what we're looking at when we talk about entry to practice. So it's really important that we set a standard that's fair and reasonable. So it's not about necessarily the ultimate best care, but a minimum standard to which we know the public will be safe and get the care that they're looking for. Okay? We also have title restrictions. So as of April 1st, no one in the province of Ontario can call themselves a kinesiologist unless they are a member of the college. Just like you couldn't call yourself a doctor unless you belong to the College of Physicians and Surgeons. So we protect the title. And anybody who is misusing the title is then breaking the law. We maintain a public registry. So what that means is we have a list of all the members of the college. It's public. Anyone can access it. So if someone isn't sure that you're registered, they can go to the website, look it up, and go, yep, they're a member, we know that they've met standards, and we're comfortable going and working with them. Okay. We handle complaints and disciplines. So as I mentioned, one of our major roles is if a complaint does come in about a member, that it's handled fairly. So we've had to set up a number of processes to do this. So you can really rest assured, I think, that should somebody complain, the complaint will be vetted appropriately. So if there's a need to investigate, it will be fully investigated. So we meet all of the requirements in terms of being legally fair so that everybody gets a just hearing out of any complaint that comes in. And heaven forbid that, unfortunately somebody has committed an act of professional misconduct, we will have to discipline people. Now, discipline takes a number of different forms. It could be remediation, going and taking an extra course because we found that maybe an individual was lacking knowledge in a certain area, and that was what the issue was really about. Up and including potentially taking away somebody's license. Okay, but there's a number of levels in between that. So I mean, some of the acts of professional misconduct or inappropriate billing procedures, not getting proper consent, all the way up to sexual misconduct, which is a huge one. So one of the things our college is responsible for is keeping a contingency fund in the event that something like that happens. So we have to have a victims fund. So we deal with a number of different matters, everything from something that's relatively minor to quite severe issues. One of the other things that the college is responsible for is the quality of care. So as I mentioned, we're putting together standards of practice. So standards of practice are quite broad. And oftentimes people think this means, well, how do I do a certain activity as a kin? So how do I do a particular assessment, or what are the standards expected for an assessment or delivery of care? So certainly there will be some of those come out. But a huge part of what we do is we produce standards in terms of professionalism and professional behavior. So I mentioned consent, for example. Consent is a huge issue. We're required to get consent from patients and clients to treat them, and it's very difficult sometimes to understand what informed consent means. What does that look like? What are the rules around consent? What are the rules around privacy? How do I have to keep records and documents? Who can I give information to and who can't I give information to? So one of our huge roles is to make sure that you're well enough informed so you can do a good job of this, and that's what we're doing when we set standards. So we're explaining, what do we mean by consent? Do we expect that is it okay to just get verbal consent? Does it have to be written? So that's the kind of information that we're putting together in standards to make sure that you can operate as a professional and do the appropriate job and ensure that the public's adequately protected. Quality assurance program. So one of our regulations that we had to write was a quality assurance regulation. So here in Ontario, all of the healthcare professions are expected to stay current. So what that really means is up to date with what's going on. So one of the things that we'll be asking is that people keep a portfolio of all the educational type activities that they participate in. And there will be some audits of practice and some audits of those portfolios to ensure that the profession is actually participating in those activities. Okay? And that can be a broad range of different things, but it's actually legally required that all healthcare professionals participate in quality assurance. One of the biggest pieces that's, sorry?
Will the college be determining what sort of workshops or courses and things that are professional education?
Okay, so the question is the college going to determine what workshops and education courses are approved? For the purposes of people maintaining their portfolios, no, we're not going to be going through a checklist like that. There will be instances where things are referred to quality assurance for a particular reason, and we may identify a course that will fill a gap. Okay? So we'll be doing some of that. So the last point here, one of the major things that healthcare professionals are now charged with doing in the province of Ontario under legislation is interprofessional collaboration. I got to tell you, I had a laugh when they decided they had to legislate that health professionals need to talk and work with each other. But it's now a requirement. So we will be working with the other colleges on interprofessional collaboration. So when you're working in that multidisciplinary team, what does the care look like? What are the standards that are expected? Are they the same standards that another health profession is providing? So we know with kinesiologists that we work very closely with physiotherapists, occupational therapists, chiropractors. So what is the expectation on them for providing certain types of care? And what's your expectation? Do they meet up? So these are going to be some ongoing things that the colleges will be endeavoring to do. So we've already had initial outreach with the physiotherapy college to talk about moving forward with these things after we open our doors. So it's really, I think, historically a very exciting time because I think we're going to see better care if we can make this interprofessional collaboration work. Okay, so what's this whole business about being a regulated practitioner in the first place? So the ABCs of membership. So the first one is adherence to practice standards and professional code of ethics. So we expect that members will pay attention to the standards, they will adhere to them and uphold them, and to engage in ongoing professional development. So these are requirements on you. Okay? One of the regulations is the professional misconduct regulation, and this regulation lays out all of the things that would be considered basically acts of misconduct, things you shouldn't do. So we'll expect that you adhere to the regulation and then to the standards that are there to support the regulation. Behavior. So one of the things that happens when you step into the role of being a professional is there is an increased expectation that you will behave professionally in any setting. Okay? So even when you're not working, you are expected to act like a professional. So you can't be out socially somewhere and mention a client, goof around, make comments about them. You can't do anything that's unbecoming to the profession. Right? So this is why even things like drunk driving charges could come before the college to be, questioned in terms of whether you're fit to practice. Is there an ongoing problem that you're having? Okay? So this is about overall public protection. So you have to be aware, and I think one of the challenging things that's going on right now is with the explosion of social media, we oftentimes don't realize that things are going to get out there or could potentially get out there that could fall under this behavior category, and you could have the college questioning you. Okay? So it's expecting that you will behave in a certain way. And the C, commit to the profession. It is a big commitment to become a regulated health profession. But the reason I spent so much time at the beginning of this emphasizing your involvement is because you have opportunity to be involved and determine the standards. If you aren't involved, somebody else is going to make those determinations. If you don't read the material that the college is putting out, proposing, and make comments about it, guess what? It'll go through, and afterwards you'll be sitting there wondering, well, how did that happen? I didn't want that. I didn't say anything. So it's really important that people become involved. And as we move forward, people are going to have to become members of our council. So the composition of council after we open the doors, we're going to have 7 to 9 members from the profession. These are elected members of the college. So you run to be elected in one of, I think it's 6 districts we've got set up. And then there's going to be the public appointees. And the public appointees come from a variety of backgrounds, accounting, lawyers, all kinds of different people could potentially come through the door as public appointees. Okay? But what we want to see is that people actually come out to be elected, to actually make sure that this continues to operate in the way that it's supposed to. Okay? So it's really important, I think, that people become involved with the college and determine the path that the college is ultimately going to take. Okay. So the big question mark that's up here is because we've had a number of people ask us, well, why should I become a member of the college? Maybe I'll just call myself something else and not become one. Right? Maybe I'll call myself a personal trainer and I just won't be part of the college. So rather than ignoring the fact that people have questions about this, we decided to approach it head on. The reality is you won't be able to use the title. And I think more importantly is that you're going to be missing a golden opportunity. One of the things that's certainly happening in the the working world out there is more and more insurers and corporations are looking for those qualifications. So if you're talking about gainful employment in the long run, they're going to be looking for the fact that you've stepped up and accepted responsibility as a health professional, that you're somebody that they can count upon when they're looking for services. Okay? So it's happening more and more. And we saw it at the association level. The associations created certifications, and insurers and employers started to look for the certifications. Well, now we've moved beyond that to a higher level of accountability because it's regulatory and it's governance based. And we're going to see the same thing happen. So you don't want to miss out on that. On top of all this, I think long term, we want to be part of that broad healthcare community. We know there's a lot of ongoing change. We know there's a lot of healthcare issues that need to be dealt with, particularly here in Ontario. And if we want to be part of the community that's having that conversation about how we fix those problems, we know that we've got issues with obesity and chronic diseases. Well, if we want to be part of the community having that discussion, we need to be on the same level and the same playing field with the other healthcare professionals and in the same room. So in the past, we've often been left out of those discussions, and we have so much to offer. So becoming a member of the college really says to everybody else, we're on the same level. We understand how to act as professionals. We understand how to be accountable. Now, that being said, I'll address the issue with membership in associations. Associations play a much different role. We're not here to promote you. That's not our job. The association's role is to promote you. We also do not provide insurance. We do not provide education courses. That's not our role. You will be required as a member of the college to carry insurance. You have to find some place to get that. One of the most affordable places to do that is through one of the associations that kinesiologists belong to. Okay? You have an issue with how the government is operating and treating you? Go to the association. You want to be included on insurance packages and get paid for your services? That's what the association's there to do. Okay? Now, they can use the fact that we're regulated to support that, but their role is the promotion and moving forward with getting us into other areas. Okay? Any questions about that? Because I always like to make sure people are really clear on the distinction between the two bodies. So did everybody kind of hear that? So it's going to be, I think, a really fundamental shift. And insurers, employers feel a level of comfort knowing that there's somebody who's already guaranteed that you're competent and is going to continue to ensure that you're competent to practice. It really is like sort of a bit of an assurance for them that they know what they're getting. Okay, so when should you apply? The sooner the better is what we've been telling most people. In terms of becoming a member of the college, the sooner you can get your bits and pieces together and get your application, the better off you're going to be. Now, you're in an interesting situation because you're currently in school. There are going to be two options for entering the college. One's a grandparenting route for people who are currently in practice, or who will be able to, in the next 3 years, get enough experience to apply under that option. Anybody who's not in that category will have to write an examination. But there are still requirements that are common to all applicants to the college. And I suggest that people start getting things things in order fairly quickly when they're sure they're coming in, okay? So for those of you who are graduating relatively soon, you'll want to make sure that you have the documentation necessary and know when you need to have the pieces of documentation. So I'll run through those, and then at least you have that list and you can keep them in mind. You don't have to copy it all down. You can go to the college's website. Everything will be posted. There will be application forms hopefully coming up early in the new year. This gives you the opportunity to know what you have to do and how to collect it and how long it will typically take you to get some of the things that you're going to need, okay? Okay, so preparing for application. So we do have an advanced application period that's happening. So again, this is a grandparenting thing, so I won't spend a lot of time on this because this really applies to people who are in practice now, so people like me. Because April 1st, I want to still be able to use my title. So, I mean, in terms of that preparation piece, I still recommend that everybody go to the college website and get familiar with the information on there. You're going to have to eventually learn the standards and understand all the professional misconduct pieces anyways. So you might as well start getting familiar with it now, because one of the things we're going to ask you to do is write a jurisprudence examination. Okay, and I'll talk about that in a second here. So you need to determine whether you can be grandparented, and most likely a number of you, most of you won't fall under this category, but if you're lucky enough to, kudos to you for being able to squeak in. Get all the required documents and submit the application. And take the jurisprudence course. So the jurisprudence course, what we decided to do, because this is so fundamentally important for the profession, is we have created an online learning-based course. So every member is required to take this. They're required to update it every 5 years. And really it's testing your knowledge on, do I understand what it means to be regulated? Do I understand the rules that I have to operate under? So this is, do I know what the standards are, and do I know it's in that professional misconduct regulation? Okay. So the good news is, because it's learning-based and self-paced, you can go through, and even if you don't know all the answers immediately, you'll learn them as you go. Okay. I do recommend you spend the time reading first. And regulations are a little bit dry, so an early start is good. Yeah, this picture is just to demonstrate the amount of documentation. So we're still working out where we're going to store everything. Okay, so what are you going to need to provide? Proof of language fluency as necessary. So if you've taken a degree in French or English, you're fine. That meets our requirement. For anybody who's a foreign applicant who did not take a degree in French or English, they will have to demonstrate proof of fluency. So we'll be requiring that they take an English language proficiency examination of some kind. So we're looking for, and sorry, it's actually been changed. It's a Canadian degree, kinesiology, or sorry, no, it isn't. Sorry, we had to change one of our requirements. So the degree requirement is still Ontario. The experience requirement is Canadian. So we had to make a change in our regulation most recently. It was over that. So you need an Ontario degree in kinesiology or equivalent. One of the things that we are doing right now is an equivalency project. So what fundamentally that means is that if you do not have an Ontario kin degree, you have a degree that's labeled physical education, or you're coming from out of province or out of country, we are creating basically a framework that describes what an Ontario degree is like and allows us to match and allows people to demonstrate equivalency. Okay. So fortunately, I suspect that most of you will fall under the Ontario kin degree requirements, so you'll be in a good position. Proof of good character. So this is a CPIC check, basically a criminal background check to make sure that you haven't broken any laws. It does not delve into financial stuff. There are security checks that go beyond this. It is not the vulnerable persons check. So for anybody who's working with those populations, you may have had that done. It's not the same thing. So it's a requirement that you do this. My understanding is you can pretty much go down to a police station, apply, and get it done. It does take several weeks though, so it's good to get these things on the go early when you're ready to apply. Success in the examination. So most people that are currently in school have to write the examination. This has been a major undertaking for us. So one of the things that we did was we did what's called a core competency development project. So what does that mean? Basically, we developed a list of competencies, or a list of things that were critical for kinesiologists to work independently in practice. Okay? So that list is available on the website. There are 54 core competencies, and they range from things like the understanding of how to do a physical demands analysis. No, we don't say you have to be an expert at these things, but an understanding on how to do that. All the way down into, there are some core competencies dealing with communication. So I really recommend that you have a look at this document, because this is the expectation for an entry to practice level practitioner. Okay? The way that this project was run, I think, was very comprehensive. We reached out to the kinesiology community and asked for volunteers to help us develop the competency model. So we started with an initial small group who drafted the competencies. So there were about 12 of them. We then went out to 4 focus groups, again comprised of about 12 people. They had their input into it. It came back through the council to have a look, so the committees, and went back to the focus group went back to the core group for some honing. So it really made the rounds in terms of having probably over 100 people involved in its development. And it then went out for public consultation and came back for modifications. I suspect that in the next 3 years it will probably go out for public review again. But in the meantime, this is what we're basing the exam on. So the exam will be looking to ensure that you have competencies in these areas. So the exam, in order to ensure that the exam was fair and clean, we again went through a major project to create the exam, and we're in the final stages of getting this up and running. We are the first body in the world to regulate kinesiology, so it's a major milestone. But because of that, there's no exam anywhere in the world for kins, so we had to create one. But in order to keep it very independent and clean, we created an arm's length examination committee. So the committee reports to council, but there are no members of council sitting on the committee. So again, it was formed with academics and professionals from the kin community, and they undertook working with a company who does this sort of activity to create the exam. So they designed a blueprint based on the core competencies. We then recruited item writers. These are people who are actually writing the questions. So again, kins who have been in practice for a long time, as well as academics. And we had 4 item writing groups of about 10 people, and they have developed an item bank. I think we're in the neighborhood of almost 500 questions. So this has all been set up so that the exam will be fair. We will be monitoring the success on the exams as we move forward so that we can tweak them and make sure that we're meeting the right bar in terms of testing people. Okay. So the first sitting of the exam, we are hoping that we will be able to hold it a couple months after the doors open. Unfortunately, we cannot have a sitting of the exam prior to the college becoming active, because then the results of the exam are not considered valid. So we have to wait until our doors open before we can have a sitting, so we're targeting June. We will have 6 locations around the province people will be able to write at. We will have another sitting of the exam in October, and we will have a French sitting. Okay. So that's a huge piece that we've been working on, and we will be producing guides to help people understand what they can expect on the exam. Okay, so you won't be going into it blind. Anybody has to write it.
One of the things that's obviously not on the list anymore, and I always consider is some practical hours. And I know that cost that, and it's because to me that the competencies will examine that side of things. I guess that
We haven't thrown out practical hours. There is an experience requirement. I just haven't got to it yet. Yeah, no problem. And I think it's a realistic one when we get talking about it. So the rest of the registration criteria, jurisprudence, as I mentioned, payment of fees, and we have published our fees. So Membership in the college will be $650 a year, and I'm going to talk about fees again at the end, just to explain how we arrived at $650. Okay? For grandparenting, this is where we've got proof of experience in currency. So the grandparented people do not have to write an examination, but what they do have to demonstrate is that they have been in practice. So in terms of proof of experience, we are looking for 2,000 hours over the course of the time that they have been out to show experience. Currency, on the other hand, what we're asking them to do is demonstrate that they've practiced recently, so they're current. So we are looking for 1,500 hours in the last 3 years. Okay, so if you're going to squeak in under the grandparenting side, you will have to accumulate 2,000 hours of experience, and 1,500 of those will have to be in the last 3 years. Okay.
But students applying to leave manufacturing those kinds of hours.
No. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about the entry to practice examination. So just a few other things here to keep in mind. It will be multiple choice, approximately half day. So I've already talked about the core competency profile. And it is administered by a third party. So again, that independency of the exam. So grandparenting, really current practitioners just have to demonstrate that they're able to practice safely and ethically. So again, it's a separate process for looking at them, because the assumption is that they have successfully been in practice for a few years. Part of the reason for not having an examination for the grandparented people is most people stream into an area of practice afterwards, so they don't have the same broadness later on. I can certainly speak to that. I've been practicing ergonomics now for about 20 years. Okay? So I might be hard pressed to answer a cardiac rehab question or something. Okay? So does that mean, though, that I shouldn't be allowed to continue to practice? If I decide to switch areas of practice, it's a requirement of the college that I make sure that I'm competent to do so. So, I mean, that's already in the professional misconduct reg, and there's a way of governing that with grandparented individuals. Okay. One of the other things that grandparented people have to provide are letters of reference. So they're not just going to take my word for it that I've been practicing, so I have to go and actually get other people to give me letters to say that I've been in practice. So we have a list of people who can be referees. Other kinesiologists, provided they meet all of the other requirements for registration, can provide you a letter of reference if you've worked with them. Other healthcare professionals. So, there are definitely options in terms of getting those letters of reference, and it's just to ensure that we're not making it up as we go. Okay, so I've mentioned this before. We've had a lot of people that are confused about the experience and the currency piece. Is everybody clear on the difference? Okay. Then I did an okay job of explaining it. So I think I've already hit on the note about why to apply early. You cannot practice independently until you are a member of the college and use your title. You also want to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to be open for you. Okay? So what happens to your application? Because a lot of people wonder, okay, I sent you all this information, now what the heck are you doing with it? So the things that we're going to be doing, we're going to assess to ensure that the application is complete, and then make that determination on whether the person has chosen the right path for entry. So are they actually eligible to be grandparented, or do they have to write the examination? So that's one of the pieces that we will do when we examine the applications. Any applications that the staff are uncertain about get referred to the registration committee. So the registration committee is comprised of members of council and may in the future have some other members of the college sit upon it. But the registration committee then looks at things on a case-by-case basis. So anything that isn't relatively clear-cut comes to the registration committee, and they can do a number of things, ask for more information, make the determination that the person has to write the exam, or a number of different things. Other things that happen to the application, there's verification of insurance, so you have to prove that you have insurance. It's required under the bylaws. Okay, so bylaws are another set of rules, and that governs how the organization actually operates. And again, they're subject to change when the membership decides that it needs to change the rules in terms of how the organization operates. But in the bylaws, it's specified how much insurance you need. If you have to write the exam, then there will be scheduling for the exam sitting, and information that's supplied to us gets entered into the public registry, and as you become a member, it's posted, and you're now recognized as a member.
Does that mean that we can get insurance before we're writing the exam?
Is there,
Does that mean that we can get insurance before we write the exam?
not necessarily before you write the exam, but one of the pieces that you have to be prepared with is that you can show proof of insurance before we say you're an actual member.
Just because I feel like that would be tough to get insurance before you get hired, but it'd be tough to get hired before you call yourself a kinesiologist.
Yeah. We've addressed some of this with the associations, and so one of the things that they are willing to do and the insurer is willing to do is provide insurance, provided you demonstrate that you have your application in and everything's in the queue. Right? So long as you step up and become a member, everything goes through, you'd be fine. Yeah, because there is that lag time, and so there's a recognition that that's going to happen. Anything else? So what happens if you apply after proclamation? So just so we're clear, proclamation is the date that the government proclaims the college active. So this is the April 1st date that I've been talking about. One of the other things that's going to happen is, some of you may be familiar with the Ontario Kinesiology Association. They will not be able to use the certified kinesiology designation. In fact, at the AGM this year, they voted to remove it. So nobody can use the CK designation because kinesiologist is now protected. And the college will be responding to inquiries from employers, insurers, and the public. We are already getting calls now from these bodies asking us when we're going to be open, some of them asking when they can lodge a complaint, and others just wanting to know when this is going to happen because it's going to change how they operate. Okay, so we're getting inquiries about this. People want to know when they can expect that kinesiologists will be in that same realm as the other health care professionals. Okay? So we respond on a regular basis to inquiries. And we've certainly, you don't want to miss the boat here in terms of delaying your application. And if you don't apply and don't become a member, you don't carry the same voice in terms of how the profession is governed. All right, so I said I would address the fee part. So why does it cost so much? One of the reasons is I don't want to be standing on a street corner with a fishbowl looking for donations. But in all seriousness, the college has a number of things that it has to do, and the costs are quite large sometimes for the activities that we have to do. So when we sat down as a council to figure out what to set our fees at, we looked at a number of different factors. So one was, what are all the things we're responsible for, and what does our budget look like? Secondly, how many members are we anticipating coming into the college? And we had to do this conservatively because we can't be guaranteed it. It's all well and good that an association like OK has 2,000 members. We can't be guaranteed that those 2,000 are coming through the door. We hope so, we expect so, but some of them may decide not to. So we had to budget conservatively in terms of our numbers. So I know one of the things we got in terms of feedback, people said, well, you know, the nurse's fee is really low. I think they pay $125. There's also 100,000 of them or more. So really different ballpark. And you know, the same thing got brought up with physiotherapy, although we're not too far off of what they charge. But again, they're established and they've got a solid membership. So until we get to that stage, we really had to balance things off. All that being said, we did recognize that kinesiologists are going to still continue to struggle a little bit in terms of getting themselves started and getting established. And so we didn't want to set the fees so high that it was going to be really difficult for somebody to be able to pay the fees. Okay? And when we got stakeholder feedback, one of the things that we did do, because there is a fee to apply and there is a fee for the exam, those fees were reduced. Okay, we originally started out with, I think it was a $150 application fee and a $500 fee for the exam. We weren't able to reduce them a lot, but we came down to $100 and to $400. So we recognize that people coming through the door the first time, it's a lot of money, we get it. But the other thing I will say to you is have a look at how much you paid for your degree. This is a drop in the bucket to finish what you started. Okay? It really is. So on a more practical note, what do we have to pay for? Okay, so legislative funds for abuse therapy. So we are required legally to have a victim's abuse fund for sexual abuse. So heaven forbid that this happens, but then we're responsible for paying for any therapy that this person would require. We have to have facilities. Bottom line is we need a building to operate out of, so we either have to rent or maybe long term we'll be able to purchase our own building, but right now we'll be in the position of having to rent space. Application processing is part of the fees, right? So we have to have people review these and look at them. So again, it's manpower that we're talking about. Exam development and maintenance. So in order to make sure that the exam was done and fair, we had to hire a professional company to assist us in its development. And again, I mentioned we're going to 6 different sites. Well, it's not free to go to all of those 6 sites, so we have to pay for that. We have to pay for the people who invigilate the exams. As we move forward and we're determining the success of the exam, we have to, again, pay individuals to look at that. We may have to make changes. So there's a lot of money that's involved in maintaining the exam. Facilitating access to information. We have 2 people right now who work on communications. So somebody has to maintain the website, publications, the actual registrar. So as we move forward, we're going to continue to have to communicate in a very large way with our stakeholder community. So again, maintaining access to all of that information and getting it to you quickly. So if you contact us and you want to know about something, we have to be able to give you the information. Access to information for the public. So as I mentioned, we already have people contacting us and we're not even open yet. And we expect that this will just accelerate, so we have to be able to respond quickly and get people the information they require. Complaints and investigations. Knock on wood that we won't get any complaints in early, but in the event that a complaint does come in and there is potentially some merit to it and we have to, we are actually legally required to investigate in some capacity all complaints that come in, but investigation of complaints can become very expensive. We have to hire external investigators or bring on and train our own. So again, quite an outlay of money. And then there are the legal requirements. So we have to have legal counsel. And again, that can escalate quite quickly. One case alone could cost the college in excess of $200,000. So we have to make sure that we have reserve funds in the event that we're dealing with serious matters like that. Legal and accounting fees, and these are just regular legal and accounting fees that any organization would incur. We have to make sure that we meet accounting standards. We already have an accountant. We have somebody to audit our books and make sure that we're handling our money appropriately. Improving the profession, so that quality assurance piece that we're talking about, again, providing more information and more structures to ensure that you can stay current and up to date. So again, we have to consult oftentimes with external experts to do this. So that's just a snapshot of where all that money goes to. But what I'll do is open the floor to any questions you have about regulation. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
With the exam, do you have any idea, any estimation of like minimal standard success rates?
In terms of what percentage we expect to pass fail?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, if we were getting an extremely low pass rate, that would be a trigger. So I don't want to say off the top of my head what the number is, but there is a set percentage that we're expecting to pass the exam. But what we'll be looking at is a sort of a deviation in terms of where we're seeing people pass and fail. So how many are just over or just under? We're going to look at those sorts of metrics. So that they've got a whole series of things that they're giving consideration to in terms of looking at the success of the exam. We will look at it internally across institutions to get an idea. We will look at it in terms of areas. Is there an area that seems to be problematic? So we do want people to be able to pass it, though. We don't work very well without members, so we've got to kind of get it right.
Do you only have to write the exam once?
Yes, you only have to pass it once. You get 3 opportunities to write the examination, though. So if you write and fail, you will get feedback from the college about your results.
Then you pay again. You have to pay again to write it. Full price.
Yep.
How frequently will these be offered? Once a year?
At the moment, we're looking at twice a year. It'd be really difficult to do it just once, I think.
You have to be recertified every year, or like keep making payment.
Yeah, there's an annual. The $650 is the annual membership fee. So, and all you have to do once you're in the door is maintain your quality assurance requirements. Don't come in conflict with the misconduct regulation, and then hopefully you'll participate in other ways. But yeah, stay up to date.
You said every 5 years, so we have to keep up with, like, to keep the name.
Jurisprudence.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so there's 2 different examinations. There's an exam for entry to practice, and then there's an examination that tests just on things like the misconduct regulations. So that's questions on consent, billing, sexual misconduct, and those sorts of issues. Okay, and we expect that every 5 years people will refresh. Part of that is in case there's changes as well. We want people to stay up to date.
So once you become part of like college and pass your year certified, can you like drop it at any point? Like for example, say you become certified, pass the test, and pay $650 a year. That next year you don't have a job and it's say you can't get a job, whatever, and you decide you can't afford it. So do you not like just I don't understand the process, like you're not a member anymore and then when you reapply do you re-examine or just don't understand.
It's a difficult question to answer only because it depends. There's a lot of things it depends upon. So you can go inactive, but usually inactive is just for people who are on maternity leave or are traveling or those sorts of things. But you need to inform the college if you are going to be inactive.
Okay, so then the fee is limited the year that you are, or
I'd have to double check. I don't think so though. Okay.
I just hypothetical
Yeah.
situation.
But if you're in the position of something being a financial hardship, come and talk to the college about it, okay? And, it's obviously a difficult situation, but something that the college will work with you on. Any other questions?
And practitioners can hold more certifications, so it's somebody called kinesiologists or therapists.
Yes. So, but you have to be members of those colleges. If you hold dual registration with another college, one of the things you have to be really careful about is that when you're treating somebody, you are clear how you're acting. So if somebody's coming to you for therapy and you've got, you're registered as a kin and as a physiotherapist, you have to tell them whether you're operating as a physio, and then if you switch and you're actually operating as a kin. Okay.
What's the format of this examination?
It's multiple choice.
Choice, okay, awesome.
Yeah. You know, we've been asked about a practical component. We're not there yet. Plus, the evidence kind of is out on whether the practical exams actually get the results in terms of competency that we're hoping for, and they're hugely expensive. Yeah, we are trying not to take it out of everybody's hide.
So is there no interview process for anything like that?
No,
No type of interviews or
no interviews. You don't get to come before the firing squad. Okay, anybody, anything else? Well, thank you and good luck.